The headlights cut through October rain like knives through silk when Luke Harper's truck nearly killed the boy. 7 years old, barefoot blood mixing with rainwater on his torn shirt, the child stood frozen in the middle of that mountain road like a ghost made flesh. But it wasn't fear in his eyes. It was something worse, the hollow look of someone who'd already survived hell. When the boy's trembling finger pointed to the ditch where his mother lay dying, Luke didn't know he was about to save the heir to $1 billion empire. Welcome to a story about how the richest treasures often come wrapped in the poorest packages. I'm curious, what city are you watching from? Let me know in the comments how far this story has traveled. The October rain hammered Luke Harper's windshield with the fury of 1,000 angry fists. His 1998 Ford pickup groaned against the mountain road's curves. Each turn a negotiation between worn tires and slick asphalt. He shouldn't have been out this late. Maya would be worried sick, probably standing by the window with her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, watching for his headlights. But the pharmacy in town had been out of her asthma medication, and the next town over was 40 miles through these god-forsaken hills. Luke's calloused hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as lightning split the sky, illuminating the pine forest that pressed against both sides of the narrow road like dark walls. 3 years since Caroline died, and he still talked to her on nights like this when the loneliness pressed so hard against his chest he could barely breathe. "Should have taken the main highway," he muttered to the empty cab to Caroline's ghost to himself. "But you always loved this old road, didn't you? Said it felt like driving through a fairy tale." Some fairy tale. More like one of those old German stories Maya loved, the kind where children got lost in dark woods and never came home. The boy appeared so suddenly that Luke's brain couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. 1 second empty road. The next, a small figure materialized in his headlights like something conjured from the storm itself. Luke's foot slammed the brake pedal to the floor. The truck's tires screamed against wet pavement, the vehicle sliding sideways, missing the child by inches. Time stopped. The boy didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there in the middle of the road, rain plastering dark hair to his forehead, wearing what might have once been a white shirt, but was now torn and stained with something that looked black in the darkness. But Luke knew with sick certainty was blood. Jesus Christ. Luke threw the truck into park and jumped out, not even bothering to grab his jacket. The rain hit him like ice water soaking through his flannel shirt instantly. "Kid. Hey kid, are you hurt?" The boy's eyes green. Luke would remember later the brightest green he'd ever seen locked onto his face with an intensity that made Luke's breath catch. This wasn't the look of a child. This was the look of someone who'd seen too much, survived, too much, aged beyond their years in ways that had nothing to do with time. "Please," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Please help her." "Help who? Where are your parents?" Luke knelt down, his construction worker's knees protesting against the wet asphalt. Up close he could see the bruises on the boy's arms, the cut on his lip, the way he held his left arm against his ribs, like something was broken. The boy didn't answer with words. He just raised one trembling hand and pointed toward the ditch that ran alongside the road. Luke's stomach dropped. He grabbed the flashlight from his truck and ran to the edge, his boots slipping on the wet grass. The beam of light swept down into the darkness, and there she was. A woman, maybe 30, lay crumpled at the bottom of the 6-foot ditch, like a broken doll someone had thrown away. Her dark hair spread around her head in the muddy water, and even from here Luke could see the bruises on her face, the unnatural angle of her leg, the way her chest barely rose and fell. "Ma'am." Luke half slid, half fell down the embankment. His hands found her neck, searching for a pulse. There, weak but steady. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, confused. "Evan," she breathed. "My boy. Evan? He's safe. He's right up there." Luke's mind raced through his first aid training from the construction site. Moving her could make things worse, but leaving her here in the cold rain could kill her. "What's your name?" "Anna." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, don't let them find us. Nobody's finding anybody tonight except me finding you some help." Luke shrugged off his flannel shirt, wrapping it around her shoulders. "I'm gonna lift you, okay? It might hurt." She nodded, tears mixing with rainwater on her battered face. Luke positioned himself carefully, one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back. She weighed almost nothing, as if fear and flight had hollowed out her bones. The climb back up the embankment was treacherous, his boots fighting for purchase in the mud, but somehow he made it. The boy Evan stood exactly where Luke had left him, hadn't moved an inch. His green eyes tracked Luke's every movement as he carefully laid Anna in the truck's extended cab. "Get in," Luke told the boy. "We need to get your mom to a hospital." "No." Both mother and son said it at the same time, with the same terror in their voices. "No hospital," Anna gasped, her hand clutching Luke's arm with surprising strength. "Please, they'll find us. They'll take him." Luke looked between them, this broken woman and her silent wounded child, and made a decision that would change all their lives. "Okay, no hospital, but I'm taking you somewhere safe." He helped Evan into the truck, noticed how the boy immediately took his mother's hand, holding it like an anchor. "My name's Luke. I've got a cabin about 10 miles from here. We'll figure this out." "Okay." Evan nodded solemnly. In the dome light of the truck, Luke could see him better, delicate features that would probably be called pretty when he grew up, those startling green eyes and something else. An intelligence that seemed to burn behind his gaze, taking in everything, processing, calculating. The drive to the cabin was silent, except for Anna's occasional whimpers of pain and the sound of rain on metal. Luke kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching Evan stroke his mother's hair with one small hand, whispering words too quiet to hear. The boy's other arm was definitely injured. He kept it pressed against his side, but he showed no sign of his own pain. All his focus was on his mother. Luke's cabin appeared through the trees like a promise of safety, its windows glowing warm against the storm. He'd built it himself after Caroline died, needing something to do with his hands, something to keep him from drowning in grief. 2 stories of log and stone with a wraparound porch and a chimney that always drew perfectly. Maya would be asleep by now. Linda from next door always stayed until 10 when Luke had to work late. He pulled up as close to the front door as possible. "Evan, can you walk?" The boy nodded. "Good. I'm going to carry your mom inside. You follow close, okay?" Luke lifted Anna again, felt her trembling against his chest. She was burning with fever now, her skin hot even through the wet clothes. The front door was unlocked. Nobody locked doors up here, and he shouldered it open, carrying her straight to the couch. "Daddy?" Maya's voice from the stairs, thick with sleep. "Daddy, you're home." "Hey, baby girl, go back to bed, okay? Daddy's got some friends who need help." But Maya was already padding down the stairs in her purple pajamas, her asthma making her breath wheeze slightly. She stopped dead when she saw Evan standing in the doorway, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. "Who's that?" she asked, with the direct curiosity only a 7-year-old could manage. "That's Evan," Luke said, grabbing towels from the bathroom. "He and his mom got caught in the storm. They're going to stay with us tonight." Maya studied Evan with serious brown eyes. Then, without a word, she walked over and took his good hand. "You're hurt," she said matter-of-factly. "Daddy's good at fixing hurt things. He fixed my bike and my dollhouse and Mr. Buttons when his ear came off." Evan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since Luke had found them, something in the boy's face softened. "Mr. Buttons." "My rabbit." Maya held up the stuffed animal she'd been clutching. "Want to hold him?" "He helps when things hurt." Evan took the rabbit with his good hand, holding it carefully like it was made of glass. "Thank you," he whispered. Luke's throat tightened. He turned back to Anna, who was conscious but barely. "I need to check your injuries. Is that okay?" She nodded weakly. "Evan first, please. Check my boy first." Luke knelt in front of Evan. "Can I look at your arm, buddy?" The boy set down Mr. Buttons carefully and pulled up his torn shirt. Luke's jaw clenched at what he saw. These weren't injuries from falling in a ditch. These were defensive wounds, bruises in the shape of adult fingers, what looked like a boot print on his ribs. "Who did this to you?" Luke kept his voice gentle, but inside rage was building like a furnace. Evan's green eyes met his. "The bad men," he said simply. "They came for Mama. I tried to stop them." "You're very brave," Luke said, meaning it. "Maya, can you get the first aid kit from the bathroom? The big red one. As Maya ran off, Luke turned back to Anna. Her injuries were worse, definitely a broken leg, possible concussion, multiple contusions. She needed a hospital, but the tear in her eyes when he'd mentioned it. Anna, I need to set your leg. It's going to hurt. I've had worse, she said, and the way she said it made Luke believe her. Just don't let them take Evan. Promise me. If something happens to me, don't let them take my boy. Nobody's taking anybody, Luke said firmly. You're both safe here. Maya returned with the first aid kit, and for the next hour, Luke worked with the efficiency of someone who dealt with construction site injuries for 15 years. He splinted Anna's leg, cleaned and bandaged their cuts, gave them both ibuprofen for the pain and fever. Maya helped bringing water, finding clean clothes from Luke's dresser for them to change into. You're like a nurse, Evan told Maya, the ghost of a smile touching his split lip. I want to be a doctor, Maya announced. Or maybe a veterinarian, or maybe both. By the time Luke finished, Anna had passed out on the couch, her breathing finally steady. Evan sat curled in the armchair wearing one of Luke's t-shirts that hung on him like a tent still holding Mr. Buttons. You hungry? Luke asked. I make a mean grilled cheese. Evan nodded, and Luke saw tears finally start to fall down the boy's face, silent as rain. Hey, Luke said softly, kneeling in front of him. You're safe now, both of you. Whatever you're running from, it's not getting past me. They killed my dad, Evan whispered. The bad men. They said it was an accident, but I saw them. I saw them push his car. And then they came for Mama, and Uncle James held her while Aunt Patricia hit her, and they said she was nothing, that she didn't deserve the family name, that she was trash who tricked my father. Luke's hands clenched into fists. Listen to me, Evan. Look at me. The boy's green eyes met his. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to hurt you or your mom again. You have my word. You don't understand, Evan said, wise beyond his years. They have money, lots of money. They can buy anything, anyone. Well, they can't buy me. Luke stood up. And they sure as hell can't buy their way onto my mountain. Now, how about that grilled cheese? In the kitchen, while butter sizzled in the pan, Luke watched Maya showing Evan her collection of rocks and fossils, explaining each one with scientific precision. The boy listened intently, asking questions that showed a sharp, curious mind. This one's pyrite, Maya said, holding up a golden stone. Fool's gold. Daddy says sometimes the fake stuff looks prettier than the real thing. But it's not fake, Evan said quietly. It's just iron sulfide. It's real, just not what people think it is. Maya looked at him with new respect. You're smart. So are you, Evan said, and meant it. Luke flipped the sandwiches, thinking about the weight of what he'd just taken on. Two strangers clearly running from something dangerous. The smart thing would be to call the police, let the authorities handle it. But something in Anna's eyes and Evan's brave little face told him the authorities might not be the answer. His phone buzzed. Linda from next door checking that he'd made it home safe. He texted back that he didn't mention his unexpected guests. Tomorrow he'd have to figure out a story. But tonight... Sandwiches are ready, he called. They ate in the living room quietly, Anna still unconscious on the couch. Evan kept glancing at her, checking her breathing. Maya had found a nature documentary on TV, something about ocean life, that held both children's attention. Did you know, Evan said suddenly, that octopi have 3 hearts? Really? Maya's eyes widened. Why? 2 pump blood to the gills, 1 pumps it to the rest of the body. Evan took a small bite of sandwich. My dad taught me that. He loved the ocean. My mom loved the mountains, Maya said. She died when I was 4. Evan looked at her seriously. I'm sorry. Me too. About your dad. They went back to watching the documentary, and Luke felt something shift in his chest. These 2 broken families brought together by a storm in circumstance. Maybe they could help each other heal. Later, after Luke had made up beds, the guest room for Anna, the pull-out couch for Evan so he could stay close to his mother, he found the boy standing by the window looking out at the rain. You can't see them from here, Evan said. See who? The stars. My dad said if you know how to read them, you can always find your way home. The boy's reflection in the window looked ghostly, older than 7, older than time. But what if you don't have a home anymore? Luke put a hand on the boy's shoulder, gentle, careful of his injuries. Then you make a new one. Sometimes that's even better. Evan turned to look at him, those green eyes searching. Why are you helping us? You don't even know us. Luke thought about it, about Caroline, about the night she died, about all the people who'd helped him and Maya in their darkest time. Because once upon a time, someone helped me when I needed it most, and because it's the right thing to do, and because, he paused, trying to find the right words, because I look at you and your mom, and I see people worth helping. Evan's composure finally cracked completely. He started sobbing, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that came from the soul. Luke pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of his injuries, and let him cry. It's okay, Luke murmured. Let it out. You've been so brave, but you don't have to be brave all the time. I couldn't stop them, Evan sobbed. I tried, but I was too small. They hurt her because of me, because I'm the heir, because grandfather wants me, but not her. Luke filed that information away, Herr Grandfather, but didn't push. Listen to me. You're 7 years old. It's not your job to protect your mom from adults. You did more than anyone could expect. You got her to safety. You stood in that road knowing a truck could hit you just to get help. That's not being too small. That's being a giant. They stood there for a long time, the boy crying out his terror. And grief, Luke, holding him steady against the storm both outside and in. Finally, Evan's sobs subsided to hiccups. Mr. Harper. Call me Luke. Luke, what if they find us? Luke looked out at the rain, at the dark forest beyond, at his truck parked in the drive. Then they'll have to go through me. And buddy, I've got to tell you, I'm a lot bigger than you, and I don't go down easy. That earned him a watery smile. Come on, Luke said. Let's check on your mom, then get you to bed. Anna was awake when they entered the living room, her eyes clearer though still pain-filled. She reached for Evan immediately, and he curled against her good side like a cat. Thank you, she whispered to Luke. I don't know how to thank you enough. No thanks needed. But Anna, tomorrow we need to talk about who's after you. I need to know what I'm protecting you from. Fear flickered in her eyes, but she nodded. Tomorrow. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. Luke gave them privacy to say goodnight, busying himself with securing the cabin. He checked the locks, which he rarely used, and made sure the shotgun in the hall closet was loaded. He wasn't a violent man by nature, but he'd meant what he said to Evan. Nobody was getting through him to hurt this woman and her boy. Maya was in her room already, back in bed, but wide awake. Daddy, are they going to live with us? I don't know, baby. Maybe for a while. Good, Maya said decisively. Evan's nice and sad. But nice sad, not mean sad, like Mr. Coleman down the road. Luke smiled, kissing her forehead. You've got a good heart, Maya Bird. Like Mom. Just like Mom. He was heading to his own room when he heard its soft, tentative notes coming from downstairs. He crept to the landing and peered down. Evan was at the old, upright piano Caroline had insisted on buying, the one Luke couldn't bear to get rid of. The boy was picking out a melody with one hand, his injured arm held carefully against his side. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, complex, for something played one-handed by a 7-year-old. Luke recognized it vaguely, something classical, something Caroline would have known the name of. Chopin. Anna's voice came softly from the couch. His father taught him. They used to play together. Luke went back to his room, but sleep didn't come easy. He lay in the darkness, listening to the rain, thinking about the strange turns life took. This morning he'd woken up to his normal routine, get Maya ready for school, head to the construction site, worry about normal things like bills and parent-teacher conferences. Now he had 2 refugees in his living room, running from something that involved money and violence, and a grandfather who wanted the boy but not the mother. Around 3 in the morning, he heard movement downstairs. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the bed and crept down, but it was just Evan standing by the front door looking out the small window. Can't sleep? Luke asked softly. The boy shook his head. I keep watching, to make sure they're not coming. That's my job now, Luke said. How about some hot chocolate? That always helps Maya when she can't sleep. In the kitchen, while milk warmed on the stove, Evan said, My grandfather is Edward Marchand. Luke's hand stilled in stirring. Everyone knew that name. Marchand Industries. Billions in tech real estate defense contracts, the kind of money that shaped policies and bought politicians. Your dad was Julian Marchand. Evan nodded. He fell in love with my mom. She was a kindergarten teacher. Grandfather said she wasn't suitable. They got married anyway, had me. Then Dad died in a car accident 3 months ago, except you said it wasn't an accident. I was in my room. I heard them talking, Uncle James and Aunt Patricia, Dad's brother and sister. They said the brake lines were worth it, that now they could fix the mistake. The mistake was Mom, and me, unless I could be re-educated. Luke's blood ran cold. Evan, that's murder. I know, the boy said simply. I told Mom. We tried to run that night, but they caught us. Said Mom was unstable, unfit. Grandfather was coming to take me away to raise me properly. They locked us in the pool house. Mom broke the window. We ran. We've been running for 3 days. Luke poured the hot chocolate, his mind racing. This wasn't just about custody or family disputes. This was about murder, about billions of dollars, about people willing to kill to protect their inheritance. Why didn't you go to the police? Evan's green eyes were older than the mountains. Grandfather owns the police, owns judges, owns everyone. He doesn't own me, Luke said firmly. That's what my dad used to say, Evan said quietly. And now he's dead. They sat in silence, drinking hot chocolate while the rain finally began to let up. The boy was exhausted, but fighting sleep standing guard over his mother, even at 7 years old. Come on, Luke said finally. Let's get you back to bed. I'll stay up and keep watch. Promise? Evan's voice was very small. Promise. Luke tucked him into the pull-out couch, made sure he could see his mother from where he lay. The boy was asleep in minutes, his hand stretched out toward Anna's couch, like he needed to know she was there even in sleep. Luke settled into the armchair with his coffee and his shotgun across his lap. The rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were touching the mountains. In a few hours, Maya would wake up, and he'd have to figure out how to explain all this. He'd have to figure out how to protect these people against one of the richest, most powerful families in America. But watching Anna and Evan sleep, seeing the bruises on their faces, and the way they reached for each other, even unconscious. Luke knew he'd already made his choice. He'd stood at his wife's graveside and promised to be a better man, a man she'd be proud of. This was his chance. A movement outside caught his eye. A deer stepping carefully through the yard, pausing to look at the cabin before disappearing into the forest. Luke took it as a sign. The mountain would protect them, the forest would hide them, and he would stand between them and anyone who tried to hurt them again. As the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Luke Harper sat guard over the broken little family that had literally crashed into his life. He didn't know what the coming days would bring, what violence or legal battles or threats would come their way. But he knew one thing for certain: they weren't alone anymore. The boy had asked what happened when you didn't have a home anymore. Now Luke knew the answer. Caroline would have given the answer that lived in these old mountains and in the hearts of people who still believed in doing right. You become home for someone else. You open your doors to the storm-tossed and the broken. You stand guard through the long nights. You become the safe harbor, the steady ground, the unshakable foundation that says, here, rest here, heal here, be safe here. And so as October dawn broke over the North Carolina mountains, Luke Harper kept watch. A widowed construction worker with calloused hands and a heart still tender from loss, standing guard over a beaten mother and her brilliant, brave little boy. He didn't know yet that Evan's mind could solve complex equations, that he could build working machines from spare parts, that his grandfather would spend millions trying to find him. He didn't know that Anna would teach Maya to paint, that she had a laugh like silver bells when she wasn't afraid that she would bring music back into the cabin that had been silent since Caroline died. He didn't know that in 6 months, when Edward Marchand himself stood on that porch with all his money and power, it would be 7-year-old Evan who would send him away with words wise beyond his years. He didn't know about the love that would grow slowly, carefully between him and Anna, built on respect and shared protection rather than rescue and need. He didn't know about the school they would build, the other lost children they would help, the way their strange little family would become a beacon of hope in these mountains. All Luke knew as October sunshine finally broke through the clouds was that two people had needed help, and he had given it. That a brave little boy had stood in the road willing to die for his mother, and that kind of love deserved protection. That sometimes life gave you exactly what you needed, exactly when you needed it, even if it came wrapped in pain and rain and blood. Maya appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Daddy, is everything okay?" Luke looked at his daughter, at the sleeping refugees in his living room, at the sun painting everything gold and new. "Yeah, baby girl," he said softly. "Everything's going to be just fine." And for the first time since that terrible night 3 years ago, when the hospital called about Caroline, Luke Harper believed it might actually be true. The morning sun climbed higher over the mountains as Luke stood at the stove scrambling eggs, while Maya set the table with careful precision, placing each fork exactly parallel to each knife. She kept glancing toward the living room where their guests still slept, her curiosity barely contained. "Daddy," she whispered, "why does Evan's mom have those purple marks on her face?" Luke's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. "Sometimes people hurt other people, baby, but that's why they're here now, so nobody can hurt them anymore." Maya nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Can I show Evan my telescope later? Maybe he knows about constellations like his dad did." Before Luke could answer, he heard movement from the living room. Anna was trying to sit up, her face contorting with pain. He quickly plated the eggs and rushed to help her. "Easy," he said, supporting her back. "That leg needs to stay elevated." Her dark eyes met his clearer now than last night, but still holding that haunted quality. "I need to leave. We've put you in danger just by being here. If they find us—" "Then they find us," Luke said firmly. "You're not going anywhere on that leg, and even if you could, where would you go?" "I have some money hidden," Anna said. "Not much, but enough for bus tickets. Maybe Canada." "Mom, no." Evan was awake, sitting up on the pull-out couch, his green eyes fierce. "We can't run anymore. You can barely walk." "I can manage." "No," Luke interrupted. "Listen, I don't know the whole story yet, but I know enough. You're hurt, scared, and running from people with resources you can't match. You need time to heal and figure out your next move. You have that time here." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what you're risking. The Marchand family, they destroy anyone who gets in their way. Julian tried to protect me from them, and now he's dead." "Tell me everything," Luke said, settling into the armchair. "From the beginning." Anna looked at Evan, who nodded encouragingly. She took a shaky breath and began. "I met Julian at a charity event 8 years ago. I was there with the kindergarten class. We'd made paintings to auction for the children's hospital. Julian bid $10,000 on a finger painting of a rainbow." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He said it was the most honest art he'd seen in years. She shifted, wincing at the movement. "We fell in love. It was that simple and that complicated." His family was horrified. "I wasn't from their world. My father was a mechanic, my mother a nurse. They offered me money to leave. When that didn't work, they threatened me. Julian stood by me. We eloped to Vegas, got married in a little chapel with Elvis as our witness." "Elvis?" Maya had crept closer, fascinated. "Not the real one," Evan explained seriously. "An impersonator." Anna continued, her voice growing stronger with the telling. "Edward, Julian's father, cut him off completely. Julian didn't care. He had his own money from his mother's trust, enough to live comfortably. We bought a house in Vermont away from the family. When Evan was born, Julian sent his father a birth announcement. Edward sent it back torn in half." Luke's hands clenched. What kind of grandfather rejected his own grandchild? But then, Anna's voice dropped. 3 years ago, Julian's mother died. She'd been the buffer, the one who kept Edward's worst impulses in check. Without her, he became obsessed with legacy, with the family name. He started reaching out to Julian, saying he wanted to reconcile, to know his grandson. "Dad didn't trust him," Evan said quietly. "He said grandfather was a snake who'd learned to smile." "But family pressure mounted," Anna continued. James and Patricia Julian's siblings suddenly started visiting, talking about forgiveness, about Evan's inheritance, about family unity. Julian was suspicious, but he wanted Evan to know his family. We agreed to visit for Christmas last year. She paused, her breathing shaky. Luke poured her water from the pitcher on the coffee table, helped her drink. It was awful, she whispered. Edward spent the entire visit telling Evan about his legacy, his responsibilities, how he would one day run the empire. He completely ignored me, acted like I didn't exist. When I tried to join conversations, Patricia would make cutting remarks about my education, my background, my clothes. James would joke about Julian's unfortunate rebellious phase. They were mean, Evan said simply. They made Mom cry. Julian saw it all, Anna continued. On the third day, he packed us up to leave. Edward exploded, said Julian was weak, that I'd poisoned him against his family, that Evan deserved better than a mother who'd trapped his father with pregnancy. Luke's eyebrows shot up. Trapped him. Anna's laugh was bitter. We'd been married 2 years before Evan was born, but truth never mattered to Edward, only the narrative he wanted to believe. That's when Dad told him about the will, Evan added. Anna nodded. Julian had changed his will. Everything would go to me and Evan, with strict provisions that Edward and his other children would have no control over Evan's inheritance until he turned 25. If something happened to both of us, the money would go to charity, not the family. That must have gone over well, Luke said dryly. Edward went white with rage. He said Julian would regret it. That was December. In March, Anna's voice broke. In March, Dad's brakes failed on a mountain road. Evan said his young voice steady, where his mother's failed. The investigator said it was mechanical failure, but I heard Uncle James at the funeral. He was on the phone saying the mechanic had been paid off, that the investigation was closed. Luke felt cold despite the morning sun streaming through the windows. You're saying they murdered their own brother? For billions, Anna said. Julian's trust from his mother was worth almost $2 billion. His shares in Marchand Industries were worth another $1 billion. That money would give James and Patricia more control over the company unless Evan inherited it, Luke finished. Exactly. But a 7-year-old can't control billions. His guardian would. And if I was deemed unfit, Edward would get custody, Luke said, understanding dawning, and control of the money. Anna nodded. After Julian died, they started immediately. Patricia filed reports with Child Services saying I was unstable, that I'd been hospitalized for depression, which was true 10 years ago before I even met Julian. James hired private investigators to follow me looking for anything they could use. They tried to catch me drinking, dating, neglecting Evan. When they couldn't find anything real, they started creating situations. What kind of situations? Luke asked, though he suspected he knew. Mysterious calls to Child Services about bruises on Evan, bruises from playing soccer, reports of strange men at the house, actually repairmen. Patricia even tried to plant drugs in my car, but I caught her and threatened to call the police. She laughed and said no one would believe me over her. Maya had crept even closer, her hand finding Evan's. The boy squeezed it gratefully. 3 days ago, Anna continued, Edward called. He said he had a judge ready to sign custody papers, that I could either hand Evan over voluntarily and receive a generous settlement, or he'd have me declared unfit, and I'd never see my son again. I had 24 hours to decide. So you ran, Luke said. We packed what we could carry and left that night, but they were watching. They caught us at the bus station in Albany. James and Patricia with 3 men I didn't recognize. She touched her bruised face. They tried to take Evan. He fought them. A security guard started walking over and they had to let us go. We ran, hitchhiked, walked. 3 days of hiding, moving at night until you found us, Evan finished. Luke stood up, pacing to the window. The peaceful morning seemed at odds with the story he'd just heard. Murder, billions of dollars, a powerful family willing to do anything to protect their empire. The legal system, he started. Edward owns judges, Anna said wearily. Prosecutors, police commissioners. You don't become that rich without owning the people who matter. There has to be someone. With what proof? Anna asked. A conversation a 7-year-old overheard. My word against theirs. Even Julian's will, they'll say I coerced him, that I turned him against his family. They have the best lawyers money can buy. I have nothing. You have us, Maya said suddenly, her voice clear and determined. Right, Daddy? They have us now. Luke looked at his daughter so like her mother in her fierce compassion. Then at Evan, this brilliant, brave boy who'd stood in the road ready to die for his mother. Finally, at Anna, bruised and broken, but still fighting for her child. Yeah, he said quietly. You have us. Anna started crying, then great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Evan scrambled to her, careful of her injuries, wrapping his small arms around her. It's okay, Mom, he whispered. We're safe now. Luke promised. Luke's phone rang, shattering the moment. He looked at the caller ID Linda from next door. Morning, Linda. He answered, trying to sound normal. Luke Harper, don't you morning me? Linda's voice was stern but worried. I just drove by heading to town and saw your truck parked all crooked and muddy. You okay? Maya, okay. We're fine, Linda. Just had a late night. Some folks got stranded in the storm, needed help. There was a pause. Folks? Luke knew Linda. Sweet as pie, but gossipy as they came. Whatever he told her would be all over the mountain by noon. A woman and her boy. Car broke down. They're staying until we can get it sorted. Oh my goodness, are they hurt? Do you need me to bring anything? I've got that leftover casserole? We're good for now, Linda. But thanks. I'll probably keep Maya home from school today, if you could let them know. Of course, poor thing's stuck in that storm. Well, you let me know if you need anything. After he hung up, Luke turned to Anna. We need to get your story straight. People up here are friendly, but they're also curious. And if someone comes looking, we could be relatives, Maya suggested. Cousins, Evan could be my cousin. That works, Luke agreed. Anna, you're my late wife's cousin. You're visiting from where wouldn't raise suspicions. Maine, Anna said. I can do a Maine accent if needed. I spent summers there as a child. Good. Your car broke down in the storm. You're staying until it's fixed. Evan, you're being homeschooled, which explains why you're not in the local school. Evan nodded, his quick mind already working through the details. What about our last name? If someone checks Thompson, Anna said quickly. It was my mother's maiden name, generic enough not to raise flags. Anna and Evan Thompson. Luke tested it out. From Maine, here, visiting family. Good. The rest of the morning fell into a strange domesticity. Luke made breakfast properly: pancakes, bacon, orange juice. Maya showed Evan her room, her books, her collection of interesting rocks and shells Caroline had helped her gather. Anna dozed on the couch, the pain medication making her drowsy. Around noon, Luke heard a car approaching. His body tensed, hand moving instinctively toward where his shotgun leaned against the wall. But it was just Linda's ancient Buick cautiously navigating the dirt road. Stay inside, he told the others, stepping onto the porch. Linda emerged with a covered dish and a bag of groceries. Now, Luke Harper, I know you said you didn't need anything, but I couldn't help myself. Poor thing stuck in that storm. She was craning her neck, trying to see past him into the cabin. Luke took the dishes with thanks, blocking her view. That's kind of you, Linda. They're resting now, had a rough night. Of course, the woman she married, is her husband coming for them? Luke's jaw clenched. She's widowed. Recently. Linda's face softened immediately. Oh, the poor dear. And with a child, too. Well, you just let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. After she left, Luke brought the food inside. It was a shepherd's pie, still warm, smelling of home and comfort. She seems nice, Anna said carefully. She is. Also the biggest gossip on the mountain. By tomorrow, everyone will know you're here. But that might work in our favor, harder to make people disappear when everyone knows about them. That afternoon, while Anna slept, Luke took the children outside. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving everything sparkling in the October sun. Maya showed Evan her favorite spots: the creek where she caught salamanders, the old oak that was perfect for climbing the flat rock where she and Luke sometimes ate lunch. Evan absorbed everything with those intense green eyes, asking questions that showed a mind that never stopped working. When Maya mentioned the creek sometimes flooded, he immediately started calculating water volume and flow rates. When she showed him her simple tree fort, he suggested improvements that would make it structurally sounder. "You know a lot about building," Luke observed. "I like to understand how things work," Evan said simply. "Dad taught me." He said understanding the world was the first step to changing it. That evening, as the sun painted the mountains gold and crimson, they ate Linda's shepherd's pie around the dining table Luke had built with his own hands. It was the first time in 3 years that the table had felt full complete somehow. Anna told them stories about teaching kindergarten, about the funny things 5-year-olds said about art projects gone hilariously wrong. Maya laughed until milk came out her nose when Anna described the day they'd tried to make papier-mâché volcanoes and ended up with what looked like angry mushrooms. Evan, warming up, shared his own stories about the time he'd built a working catapult for the science fair and accidentally launched an apple through the principal's window, about the elaborate Rube Goldberg machine he'd constructed in his bedroom that would turn on his lamp when his alarm went off. "That's genius!" Maya exclaimed. "Can you build one for me?" "Sure." Evan said, his face lighting up. "I'll need some materials, though, string pulleys, maybe some small motors." "I've got all that in the workshop," Luke said. "Construction sites always have spare parts." As they talked and planned, Luke caught Anna watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but something else. Wonder maybe that such simple kindness still existed in the world. After dinner, Luke carried Anna to the guest room he'd prepared. It had been Caroline's craft room, but he'd cleared it out, made it comfortable. The window looked out over the valley where lights from other cabins twinkled like earthbound stars. "This is too much," Anna said as he settled her on the bed. "We're disrupting your entire life." "My life needed disrupting," Luke said honestly. "Maya and we've been going through the motions since Caroline died. Existing, not living. Having you here, it's like the house can breathe again." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know how to thank you." "Then don't. Just focus on healing. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Downstairs, he found the children in the living room. Maya was showing Evan her mother's photo albums, pointing out pictures from various adventures. "That's Mom at the Grand Canyon," she said, "and that's her and Daddy on their wedding day. Wasn't she pretty?" "She was beautiful," Evan agreed solemnly. "She looks kind." "She was the kindest," Maya said matter-of-factly. "She would have liked you. She always said the best people were the ones who'd been hurt, but still chose to be good." Luke's throat tightened. He cleared it loudly. "All right, you two. Time to get ready for bed." "Can Evan sleep in my room?" Maya asked. "We could put the sleeping bag on the floor." Luke looked at Evan, who seemed surprised by the offer. "If he wants to." "I'd like that," Evan said quietly. As Luke helped set up the sleeping bag in Maya's room, he heard the two children talking. "Do you miss your dad?" Maya asked. "Every day," Evan replied. "Do you miss your mom?" "Every day. But Daddy says that missing someone means you love them, and loving someone is never wrong, even if it hurts." "Your dad's smart." "He is. He just pretends he's not sometimes." Luke smiled despite the ache in his chest. He left them to their conversation, returning downstairs to check the locks and windows. It was probably paranoid, but Anna's story had put him on edge. These weren't just angry relatives they were dealing with. These were people who'd allegedly committed murder for money. He was standing on the porch, shotgun across his lap, when he heard the piano again, soft, hesitant notes floating through the open window. He crept to look inside and saw Evan at the keys, Maya beside him. "Teach me," Maya was saying. "Okay, put your thumb here on middle C. That's the center of everything." Evan guided Maya through a simple melody, patient with her mistakes, encouraging with her successes. Within minutes, she was picking out "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" with one finger. "You're a good teacher," Maya said. "Like your mom." "She taught me to teach," Evan said. "She said sharing knowledge was how we made the world bigger." Luke returned to his guard post, thinking about these two broken families finding each other in the darkness. He thought about Caroline, what she would say about all this. She'd always believed in signs in the universe, putting people where they needed to be. I hope you're right, Care, he whispered to the stars beginning to emerge overhead. I hope this is where we're supposed to be. Around midnight, he heard footsteps. His hand tightened on the shotgun, but it was just Anna hobbling on a makeshift crutch she'd fashioned from a mop handle. You should be resting, he said. Couldn't sleep. Too much pain. Too many thoughts. She carefully lowered herself into the other porch chair. I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream, that kindness like yours doesn't really exist. It's not kindness, Luke said. It's just doing what's right. Most people don't see it that way. Most people would have driven past a boy in the road, would have taken us to a hospital despite our protests, would have called the authorities. I'm not most people. No, Anna agreed softly. You're not. They sat in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the moon. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called lonely and haunting. Tell me about Julian, Luke said eventually. Not the tragedy. Tell me about the man. Anna smiled the first real smile he'd seen from her. He was brilliant. Not just smart, anyone can be smart, but brilliant in the way he saw connections others missed. He'd look at a problem and see 12 solutions where others saw none. Evan gets that from him. She shifted, adjusting her injured leg. But more than that, he was good. Genuinely deeply good. He volunteered at homeless shelters not for show, but because he couldn't stand seeing people suffer. He'd give away money constantly to strangers who needed it to causes everyone else ignored. His family hated that about him, said he was soft. Sounds like someone who knew what actually mattered. He did. He used to say that money was just a tool, and people who worship tools were missing the point of existence. She laughed softly. Edward nearly had a stroke when he heard that. What did Julian do for work, if he was cut off from the family business? Software development. He created educational programs for underprivileged schools. The company barely broke even because he practically gave the programs away, but he didn't care. He said seeing kids learn was worth more than profit. Luke thought about Evan's quick mind, his natural teaching ability with Maya. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. He would have liked you, Anna said suddenly. Julian, he would have respected what you're doing for us. I'm not doing anything special. You are, though. You're risking everything for strangers, your safety, your daughter's safety, your peace. That's not nothing. Before Luke could respond, headlights swept across the trees at the bottom of the drive. His body went rigid, shotgun rising. Get inside, he said tersely. Wake Evan. If something happens, take the kids out the back into the woods. There's a hunting blind about half a mile northeast. Hide there. But the vehicle stopped at the bottom of the drive, not attempting the rutted road to the cabin. Luke could make out a dark SUV engine idling. It sat there for 5 minutes, 10:15. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it backed up and drove away. Could be nothing, Luke said, but his voice was tight. Could be someone lost turning around. Or it could be them, Anna whispered, checking locations, mapping routes. If it is, they know the road's too rough for that SUV. They'd need a truck, maybe multiple vehicles. And they'd come in daylight with papers trying to look legal. You've thought about this. I've been thinking about it all day. The terrain works in our favor here. One road in dense forest all around neighbors who notice strangers. If they come, we'll have warning. Anna was quiet for a moment. We can't stay here forever. Eventually, we'll have to face them. Not tonight, Luke said firmly. Not tomorrow. Right now, we focus on getting you healed and keeping Evan safe. The rest we figure out as we go. They sat watched together until the eastern sky began to lighten, talking quietly about safer things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, dreams deferred but not forgotten. Anna told him about wanting to open an art school for kids who couldn't afford classes. Luke admitted he'd once wanted to be an architect before life, and bills got in the way. It's not too late, Anna said. Dreams don't have expiration dates. Some do. Luke said, thinking of Caroline, of all the dreams that died with her. No, Anna said gently. Those dreams transform. They become new dreams, different but still meaningful. Julian's gone, but his dream of Evan growing up good and kind and brilliant, that dream lives on, just differently than he planned. As dawn broke properly, painting the mountains in shades of rose and gold, Luke heard movement from inside. Maya and Evan emerged still in pajamas, Maya's hair a wild tangle, and Evan sticking up at odd angles. "We couldn't sleep," Maya announced. "Too many thoughts." "Join the club," Luke said, making room for them on the porch steps. They watched the sun rise together, this strange new family, forged by circumstance and held together by something that might have been fate or might have been simple human kindness. The mountains stood eternal around them, guardians of stone and earth that had seen countless sunrises, countless human dramas play out in their shadows. "My dad would have loved this view," Evan said quietly. "My mom did love it," Maya added. "She said mountains made human problems seem smaller." "Not smaller," Anna corrected gently. "Just more manageable. Mountains show us that big things can be climbed one step at a time." Luke looked at her, this woman who'd been beaten and chased and threatened, still finding wisdom to share with children. He looked at Evan, 7 years old and already carrying weights that would crush grown men. He looked at Maya, his miracle who'd lost so much but still opened her heart to these strangers who needed shelter. "We're going to be okay, Shol," he said, and meant it. "All of us. We're going to be okay." The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist, revealing the valley in all its October glory. Somewhere below, normal people were starting normal days, coffee brewing school buses, loading the everyday miracles of ordinary life. But here on the mountain, in a cabin built by grieving hands, something extraordinary was taking shape. A new kind of family, born of tragedy, but nurturing hope. A sanctuary not just from the storm, but from the cruelty of those who valued money over humanity. The day stretched ahead, full of uncertainty. Edward Marchand and his billions loomed like a thundercloud on the horizon. But for now, for this moment, they were safe. They were together. And sometimes Luke thought, as Maya leaned against his knee and Evan helped Anna adjust her injured leg, sometimes that was miracle enough. The mountains stood witness, ancient and patient, keeping their secrets. And if anyone had been watching from the valley below, they would have seen only a cabin with smoke rising from its chimney, a family on its porch greeting the day ordinary as breathing and precious as life itself. The morning light grew stronger as Luke made his way to the workshop behind the cabin, Evan trailing behind him with eager curiosity. The boy's injured arm was in a proper sling now, fashioned from one of Caroline's old scarves that Luke had found in a drawer. The workshop smelled of sawdust and motor oil, a combination that always reminded Luke of his father, who'd taught him everything about working with his hands before drinking himself to death when Luke was 15. "This is amazing," Evan breathed, taking in the organized chaos of tools, spare parts, and half-finished projects. His good hand traced along the workbench where Luke had been restoring an antique clock. "You're fixing a Seth Thomas movement. These are from the 1880s. Luke raised an eyebrow. "How does a 7-year-old know about clock movements?" "Dad collected them. He said mechanical things were honest, they either worked or they didn't know pretense." Evan carefully picked up a tiny gear. "This one's worn down. See the teeth, they're not catching properly anymore." "I've been trying to figure out why it keeps losing time," Luke admitted. "You need to replace this gear or file down the worn teeth and adjust the escapement to compensate." Evan set the gear down gently. "I could show you if you want." Luke studied the boy, this child who spoke like an engineer and had eyes that held too much pain. "I'd like that. But first let's gather those materials for Maya's Rube Goldberg machine." They spent the next hour collecting supplies, Evan explaining his vision with the enthusiasm that only emerged when he talked about building things. Luke found himself genuinely impressed by the complexity of the boy's thinking, the way he could visualize three-dimensional cause and effect chains in his head. "Your father taught you well," Luke said, loading springs and pulleys into a box. "He said I had a gift," Evan replied quietly. "But grandfather said gifts were meant to be exploited, not enjoyed. That's when Dad stopped taking me to visit." They were heading back to the cabin when Luke spotted dust rising from the valley road. His body tensed, but it was just Tom Richardson's lumber truck making its weekly delivery run. Tom honked and waved as he passed the bottom of Luke's drive, and Luke waved back, trying to look normal, despite the anxiety crawling up his spine. Inside, they found Maya and Anna at the kitchen table, Maya's schoolbook spread between them. Anna was helping her with math, her teaching instincts apparently irrepressible, even with a broken leg and bruised ribs. "If you have 12 apples and give away a third, how many do you have left?" Anna was asking. Maya's face scrunched in concentration. 8. Perfect. See, you knew it all along. Sometimes math just needs a different way of looking at it. Mom's a really good teacher, Evan said with quiet pride. The best, Maya agreed. Way better than Mrs. Henderson at school. She just gets mad when we don't understand. Teaching isn't about being smart, Anna said, ruffling Maya's hair. It's about remembering what it felt like to not understand something and building a bridge from there to understanding. Luke set down the box of supplies. How about we take a break from math and build something? The rest of the morning dissolved into controlled chaos as Evan directed the construction of an elaborate contraption that would eventually turn on Maya's bedroom light. Luke found himself marveling at how naturally Evan taught breaking down complex concepts into manageable pieces, never talking down to Maya despite the age difference. "See the marble rolls down here?" Evan explained, "and its weight triggers this lever which releases this string, which pulls the switch," Maya exclaimed, delighted. "It's like dominoes, but cooler." Anna watched from the couch, her eyes soft with a mixture of pride and sadness. Luke brought her coffee and sat beside her. "He's remarkable," Luke said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if that's why they want him so badly," Anna replied. "Not just the money, but what he could become. Edward always talked about legacy, about shaping the future. A mind like Evan's in his hands would be twisted into something cold," Luke finished, "something that valued profit over people." Julian used to have nightmares about it, about Evan becoming like Edward, brilliant but soulless, using his gifts to accumulate power instead of helping people. They watched as Evan patiently helped Maya adjust a pulley, his face lit with the simple joy of creation. This was what childhood should be, Luke thought. Not running from violent relatives, not carrying the weight of billions, just building impossible machines on a sunny October morning. The piece shattered around 2 o'clock. Luke was in the kitchen making sandwiches when he heard car engines, multiple vehicles moving slowly up the mountain road. His blood turned to ice. "Anna," he called, keeping his voice level. "We have company." She went pale, immediately understanding. "How many?" Luke peered out the window. 3 black SUVs, the kind with government plates, followed by a local sheriff's cruiser. His heart sank. They'd made it legal, just as he'd predicted. "Children upstairs," Anna said sharply. "Now." "But Mom," Evan started. "Now, Evan, take Maya to her room and stay there." The boy grabbed Maya's hand and they ran upstairs. Luke could hear Maya asking what was wrong. Evan's low voice reassuring her. Luke grabbed his shotgun, then thought better of it. They'd come with law enforcement. Any show of weapons would only make things worse. Instead, he stepped onto the porch, Anna hobbling behind him despite his protests. The vehicles pulled up in a semicircle around his truck, effectively blocking any escape route. Doors opened in synchronization, and out stepped a man who could only be Edward Marchand. He was smaller than Luke had expected, maybe 5'8", but he carried himself like a giant. Silver hair swept back from a face that might have been handsome once but had been sharpened by decades of ruthless decision-making into something predatory. His suit probably cost more than Luke made in 6 months. Behind him emerged 2 people who had to be James and Patricia. Same sharp features, same cold eyes, same expression of barely concealed disdain as they took in the modest cabin. 3 men in dark suits flanked them, clearly security. And finally, Sheriff Dale Morgan, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Mr. Harper?" the sheriff said, not quite meeting Luke's eyes. Dale had been at Caroline's funeral, had shaken Luke's hand and promised anything he needed. Now he stood with strangers against him. "These folks have a court order. They need to speak with you about the woman and child you're harboring." "Harboring," Luke kept his voice steady. "I think you mean helping. And last I checked, that wasn't illegal." Edward Marchand stepped forward, his voice cultured and reasonable, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "Mr. Harper, I'm Edward Marchand. I believe you have my grandson here, along with a woman who's been deemed mentally unstable and unfit for custody." "I have an injured woman and her son who needed help," Luke replied. And I haven't seen any proof of mental instability except from whoever did that to her face. Patricia made a dismissive sound. She did it to herself, threw herself down some stairs for sympathy. Classic manipulation tactic. Anna's hand found Luke's arm, whether for support or to hold him back, he wasn't sure. Now see here, Dale said, trying to regain control. We don't need any trouble. Mr. Marchand has legal custody papers signed by a judge. The boy needs to come with them. I'd like to see those papers, Luke said. James produced a folder with a smirk. Fresh from family court. Emergency custody granted to Edward Marchand due to the mother's documented mental illness and inability to provide stable care. Luke took the papers, scanning them quickly. They looked official, but something felt off. The judge's signature was dated today, a Saturday. Since when did family court operate on weekends? This is dated today, Luke said. Courts are closed on Saturdays. Emergency session, Edward said smoothly. Given the urgent nature of the situation, a child in danger Judge Patterson was kind enough to convene a special hearing, which Anna wasn't present for, wasn't notified about. Notification was attempted, James said, but she's been on the run hiding, hardly the behavior of a fit mother. Luke felt Anna trembling beside him. Her voice when she spoke was stronger than he expected. I ran because you tried to kidnap my son, because you murdered my husband. The silence that followed was deafening. Dale's eyes widened. Even Edward's security looked uncomfortable. Edward's face didn't change expression. My dear Anna, grief has clearly affected your mental state. These delusions are exactly why Evan needs proper care. They're not delusions, Anna said. Julian knew you were dangerous. That's why he changed his will. That's why he's dead, Patricia cut in coldly. Because he couldn't see reason. Don't make the same mistake. It might have been meant as concern, but it sounded like a threat. Dale shifted uncomfortably. Now hold on, the sheriff said. Nobody's threatening anybody. This is about the boy's welfare. Then ask the boy, Luke said suddenly. Ask Evan what he wants. Children don't get to choose, James started. At 7, a child's preference is considered in custody cases, Luke interrupted, grateful for the research he'd done that morning on Anna's laptop. Especially a gifted child who can articulate his reasoning. Edward's eyes narrowed. You seem very well informed for a construction worker. I read. Amazing what you can learn when you're not busy counting money. Daddy, Maya's voice from the doorway scared and small. What's happening? Luke's heart clenched. Go back inside, baby. But Evan appeared beside her, and the moment Edward saw him, something shifted in the old man's face. A hunger, almost a covetousness, that made Luke's skin crawl. Evan, Edward said, his voice gentling artificially. My boy, I'm here to take you home. This is my home, Evan said clearly. With my mother. Your mother is sick, Evan. She needs help, and you need to be with family who can provide for you properly. She's not sick. She's hurt because Uncle James and Aunt Patricia beat her. Evan's voice carried across the yard like a bell. Just like they hurt my father. James stepped forward aggressively. You lying little... Luke moved to block him, and suddenly everyone was in motion. Security reached for weapons. Dale stepped between them, and in the chaos, no one noticed Maya until she screamed. Stop it. Stop it. You're scaring everyone. Everything froze. This little girl in her rainbow t-shirt and mismatched socks standing with her hands on her hips like Caroline used to when she was angry, facing down millionaires and armed men without flinching. You're mean, she told Edward directly. Mean people shouldn't get to take kids away. That's not how it works. Maya, go inside, Luke said gently. No, they're being bullies, Daddy. You always said bullies only win if good people don't stand up. Edward's mouth twisted in what might have been amusement. Charming. Mr. Harper, you've filled your daughter's head with fairy tales. The real world doesn't work that way. My world does, go, Luke said firmly. On my property, it works exactly that way. Your property what? Edward laughed to sound like ice cracking. I could buy this entire mountain with pocket change. I could have you fired from every construction job in the state. I could make your life so difficult you'd beg me to take the boy. But you haven't, Anna said suddenly. If you had all that power, truly had it, you wouldn't be here with one sheriff and dubious papers. You'd have state police, FBI, real judges. You're not as powerful as you pretend. Edward's face went cold. Power is relative, my dear. And up here, isolated accidents happen. Gas leaks, fires, construction workers fall from scaffolding. Single fathers lose custody when drugs are found in their homes. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Dale had gone pale. Mr. Marchand, the sheriff said slowly, that sounded an awful lot like concern for everyone's safety. Patricia cut in smoothly. We'd hate for anything unfortunate to happen. Luke felt something shift inside him, a clarity that comes when lines are crossed. Dale, I need you to listen very carefully. This man just threatened me and my daughter. You heard it. We all heard it. Now you have a choice. You can be the sheriff who stood by while rich folks threatened working people, or you can be the man I thought you were at Caroline's funeral. Dale looked between them, torn. Edward pulled out his phone. Sheriff Morgan, should I call Governor Patterson? He's golfing with my attorney right now. I'm sure he'd be interested to hear about your lack of cooperation in a custody matter. But before Dale could respond, another voice cut through the tension. What seems to be the problem here? Everyone turned. Tom Richardson stood at the edge of the yard with his son Bobby and two other men Luke recognized from town. Linda was behind them, along with three women from her church group. More cars were pulling up the drive. No problem, Tom, Dale said quickly. Just a custody issue. Funny thing, Tom said, walking closer. Linda called saying there were strangers threatening Luke and those poor folks from Maine who got stranded. Thought we'd come check on our neighbor. More people arrived. The Brennans from 2 miles up the Colemans from the valley, even old Pete Morrison who hadn't left his cabin in months. Within minutes, there were 20 locals standing in Luke's yard, forming a protective semicircle around the porch. Edward looked around, calculating odds. This is a legal matter. Interference with a court order is a crime. What court order? Mrs. Coleman asked innocently. I don't see any court order. I just see strangers bothering our neighbors. We're witnesses, Tom added meaningfully, to everything being said here. James stepped forward. You people don't understand who you're dealing with. We understand plenty. Old Pete interrupted, his voice gravelly from decades of cigarettes. We understand folks helping folks. We understand a man standing by a woman and child who need protection. What we don't understand is rich people thinking they can come up here and throw their weight around. Edward's security team looked nervous now. They were outnumbered, and these weren't city people who'd be intimidated by suits and threats. These were mountain folk who'd faced down bears and storms and poverty, who measured character by actions, not bank accounts. This is ridiculous, Patricia said. Sheriff, do your job. Dale looked around at his neighbors, people he'd known all his life. His shoulders straightened. I am doing my job, ma'am. And right now I'm not seeing any crime except maybe trespassing and making threats. Mr. Harper, do you want these people off your property? I do, Luke said firmly. Then, folks, Dale addressed the Martians. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Edward's face was stone. This isn't over. That boy is my grandson, my heir. No backwoods coalition of nobodies is going to keep him from me. We're not nobodies, Maya said clearly. We're somebodies. We're somebodies who care about each other. Evan moved to stand beside her, taking her hand. I choose to stay here, he said, his young voice carrying impossible authority. You can't make me leave. Actually, I can, Edward said. The law says a child's welfare comes first, Anna interrupted. And Evan's welfare is here with people who love him for who he is, not what he might inherit. Love, Edward scoffed. Love doesn't pay for education, for opportunities for the future. No, Luke said, but it pays for something worth a lot more. It pays for a childhood, for safety, for the chance to grow up without being twisted into something cold and calculating. The standoff stretched taut. Then Edward smiled a predator's smile that promised this was far from over. 3 days, he said. I'll give you 3 days to come to your senses, Anna. After that, I'll bring such legal force that this entire mountain won't be able to stop me. And anyone who tries will find themselves crushed beneath it. He turned and walked to his SUV, his entourage following. Only James lingered, staring at Evan with something like hatred. "You could have had everything," he told the boy. "Now you'll have nothing." "I have my mother," Evan replied simply. "That's everything." James's face twisted, but Patricia pulled him away. The vehicles departed in a cloud of dust and barely contained fury. The moment they were gone, Anna collapsed. Luke caught her before she hit the porch, her body shaking with delayed terror and relief. "It's okay, he murmured. "They're gone. You're safe." The neighbors clustered around, voices overlapping with concern and outrage. Linda organized the women to bring food, declaring that stress required casseroles. Tom and the men talked about setting up a watch schedule, making sure the Marchands couldn't sneak back. "This ain't right," old Pete kept saying. "Rich people thinking they own everything, even children." Dale approached Luke, hat in hand. "I'm sorry, Luke. They showed up at my house this morning with those papers and threats about my job. I should have stood up to them sooner." "You stood up when it counted," Luke said. "But Dale, those papers are probably real or real enough," Dale admitted. "Money like that can buy a lot of judicial cooperation. But enforcement is another matter. I can drag my feet, require more documentation, investigate the abuse allegations. Buy you time, at least." 3 days, Anna said weakly. "He gave us 3 days." "Then we'd better make them count," Luke said. As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, casting long shadows across the yard, the neighbors gradually dispersed, but not before establishing a phone tree and watch schedule. Tom's boy, Bobby, would take first watch that night, parking his truck at the bottom of the drive. Inside, Luke made tea while Anna held Evan close on the couch, both of them still trembling. Maya sat pressed against them, paternal protectiveness radiating from her small frame. "They were so mean," Maya said. "Why were they so mean?" "Because they're afraid," Anna said softly. "People who truly have power don't need to threaten. They're afraid because Evan has something they can never buy or steal. He has love and choice and the courage to say no." "But they'll come back," Evan said, his voice small for the first time all day. "With more papers, more police, more threats." "Let them come," Luke said firmly. "This mountain has stood for millions of years. It's weathered worse storms than Edward Marchand." That night, after the children were asleep, Maya and Evan in her room again, drawing comfort from each other's presence, Luke found Anna on the porch, wrapped in one of Caroline's quilts, staring at the stars. "We should run," she said. "Tonight while we can. You've done so much, risked so much. We can't ask for more." Luke sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "You're not asking. I'm offering. Hell, I'm insisting." "Why?" She turned to him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Why would you stand against people that powerful for strangers?" Luke thought about Caroline, about the nights after her death, when neighbors had appeared with food and help and presents, about the way this community had carried him and Maya through the darkness. Because that's what we do here. We stand by each other, and because, he paused, searching for the right words. "Because when I saw you in that ditch, when I saw Evan in the road, I saw every broken thing that ever needed fixing, including myself." Anna was quiet for a long moment. "We're not projects to be repaired, Luke." "No," he agreed, "but maybe we're puzzles that fit together. Your broken edges and mine making something whole." She leaned against him then, just slightly, but it felt like a revolution. They sat in silence, watching the stars that Evan's father had taught him to navigate by, while below them, Bobby's truck lights stood sentinel against the darkness. 3 days. Edward had given them 3 days. But as Luke sat there with Anna warm against his side, their children safe inside their community, standing guard, he thought maybe 3 days would be enough. Not to run or hide, but to prepare for the kind of battle that couldn't be won with money or threats. The kind won by people who understood that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world was simply refusing to let go of each other. The moon rose over the mountains full and bright, turning the world to silver and shadow. Inside, one of the children cried out in their sleep, and both Luke and Anna started to rise. They looked at each other, shared a small smile, and went together to check on their children. Not his and hers anymore, but theirs. A family forged in crisis, but tempered by something stronger than blood or law. In the distance, a wolf howled wild and free, and the mountains echoed it back like a promise, or maybe a warning. Edward Marchand thought he could buy anything, control everything, but he'd never faced the combined will of people who'd found something worth fighting for. Luke checked the locks one more time, his shotgun within easy reach, then climbed the stairs to keep watch from the bedroom window. Below, Anna was singing softly to the children a lullaby in a language he didn't recognize but understood anyway. It was the sound of comfort, of safety, of home. 3 days. The clock was ticking, but for tonight they were together, they were safe, and they were not alone. Sometimes that was all the ammunition you needed to face down an army. The house settled into sleep, but Luke remained at the window watching, planning, preparing. Edward Marchand had billions, but Luke had something worth more: a community that still believed in right and wrong, a woman and boy who deserved protection, and a daughter who'd stood up to power without flinching. The battle was coming. But tonight in this cabin built by grieving hands and filled with unexpected love, they were ready for it. The first of the 3 days dawned cold and gray, with clouds pressing down on the mountains like a heavy hand. Luke woke to find frost on the windows, and Evan already downstairs sitting at the kitchen table with Anna's laptop, his small fingers flying across the keyboard. "What are you doing up so early, buddy?" Luke asked, starting the coffee maker. "Research," Evan said without looking up. "Grandfather made a mistake yesterday. He threatened you in front of witnesses, in front of a sheriff. That's coercion, possibly conspiracy. If we can document everything properly—" Luke studied the boy, this 7-year-old, thinking like a lawyer. "Evan, you shouldn't have to fight this battle." "It's my battle," Evan said simply, finally meeting Luke's eyes. "It's been my battle since the day I was born into that family. At least now I have allies." Anna appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on her makeshift crutch. The bruises on her face had turned purple-yellow, making her look even more fragile in the morning light. "He's been up since 4, she said softly. "I heard him typing and came down. He's writing everything down, every threat, every incident, everything he remembers about his father's death." "Will it help?" Luke asked. "Maybe, if we can find the right person to listen." Anna moved to the stove, automatically starting breakfast despite her injuries. Luke gently took the pan from her. "Sit. You're supposed to be healing." "I need to be useful," she protested. "I can't just sit and wait for them to come take my son." "Then be useful by getting better. We're going to need you strong for whatever comes next." Maya stumbled downstairs in her pajamas, Mr. Buttons dragging behind her. She climbed into Evan's lap without asking, peering at the screen. "What's coercion mean? It's when someone makes you do something by threatening you." Evan explained, his arm going around her automatically. "Like when a bully says they'll hurt you if you don't give them your lunch money." "Oh, like what your grandfather did yesterday." "Exactly like that." The phone rang, startling them all. Luke answered cautiously. "Luke, it's Tom Richardson. We got trouble. There's fancy cars all over town, men in suits asking questions about you, about the woman and boy. They're offering money for information." Luke's jaw clenched. "How much money?" "Enough that the Brennan boy already talked. Told them about seeing the woman's injuries, about you keeping them at your place. I'm sorry, Luke. People are scared and times are tight." After Luke hung up, he found 3 pairs of eyes watching him anxiously. "They're in town," he said simply, "asking questions, spreading money around." Anna's face went white. "We should leave. Now before—" "No." Luke's voice was firm. "Running now would look like guilt. Besides, where would you go that they wouldn't follow? You need time to heal to figure out a real plan." "But the danger to you, to Maya—" "We faced danger the moment I stopped for Evan in that road," Luke said. "We're in this now, all of us." The morning progressed in tense preparation. Luke called in sick to the construction site, his first absence in 2 years. His foreman, Mike, was surprised but understanding. "Family emergency, what?" Luke said, which wasn't really a lie. "Take all the time you need, what?" Mike replied. "Job will be here when you get back." If I still have a job after Edward Marchand is through with me, Luke thought but didn't say. Bobby Richardson arrived around 10, looking worried. My dad sent me to warn you. There's a news van heading up the mountain, Channel 8 from Asheville. Luke cursed under his breath. The last thing they needed was media attention. But Anna surprised him by straightening a light, entering her eyes. Let them come, she said. Anna, no. The exposure is exactly what we need. Edward controls things in shadow behind closed doors. But in the light, with cameras rolling, he has to be careful. He has to play the concerned grandfather, not the threatening tyrant. She was right, Luke realized. Public scrutiny might be their best protection. The news van arrived 20 minutes later, disgorging a reporter who looked too young for her pressed suit and a cameraman who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The reporter's name was Sarah Chen, and her eyes lit up when she saw Anna's bruises. Mrs. Thompson, she called out, using the fake name that had apparently already spread through town. I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 8. We heard there's a custody dispute involving your son. Luke started to intervene, but Anna stepped forward, dignity wrapped around her like armor despite her injuries. My name is Anna Marchand, she said clearly. And yes, there's a dispute. My late husband's family is trying to take my son against his will and mine. Sarah's eyes widened. Marchand, as in Marchand Industries. As in the family that did this to my face when I tried to protect my child, Anna said, gesturing to her bruises. As in the people who threatened Mr. Harper and his daughter yesterday for giving us shelter. The camera was rolling now. The cameraman suddenly very interested. Sarah thrust a microphone forward. These are serious allegations, Mrs. Marchand. Do you have proof? I have witnesses, Anna said. Sheriff Dale Morgan heard Edward Marchand threaten us yesterday. 20 townspeople saw it. My son heard his uncle discussing his father's murder. Murder? Sarah's voice rose. Are you saying Julian Marchand was murdered? But before Anna could answer, more vehicles appeared on the road, 3 black SUVs moving fast. Edward had seen the news van, Luke realized. He was coming to control the narrative. Get the kids inside, Luke told Anna, but Evan stood firm. No, I want to speak. Evan, I'm 7 years old, Evan said with that eerie composure. But I know what I saw, what I heard, and I want everyone else to know too. Edward emerged from the lead SUV, his face a mask of grandfatherly concern. He'd changed tactics, Luke noticed. Gone was the cold, threatening demeanor from yesterday. This was Edward Marchand, the philanthropist, the grieving grandfather. Thank God, Edward said loud enough for the camera to catch. Evan, my dear boy, we've been so worried. He started forward, arms outstretched, but Evan stepped behind Luke. Stay away from me, the boy said clearly. Edward's mask slipped for just a moment, fury flashing in his eyes, before the concerned expression returned. You see, he addressed the camera. The poor child has been turned against his own family. His mother sadly has been struggling with mental illness since my son's tragic death. She's filled his head with conspiracy theories, paranoia. That's a lie, Anna said, but Edward talked over her. We only want what's best for Evan, proper medical care for Anna, the best education for my grandson, the stability of family who can provide for them both. Sarah looked between them, sensing the bigger story. Mr. Marchand, what do you say to allegations that you threatened Mr. Harper and his daughter? Edward's laugh was perfectly calibrated, just the right mix of surprise and hurt. Threatened? I'm a 70-year-old man. How could I threaten anyone? I came here with legal custody papers trying to resolve this peacefully. If anyone felt threatened, I deeply apologize. Emotions were running high. He was good, Luke had to admit. In front of the camera, Edward transformed into something almost sympathetic, but Evan wasn't having it. You killed my father, the boy said, his young voice cutting through Edward's performance like a blade. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the cameraman held his breath. Edward's face went through several expressions before settling on shocked sorrow. Oh, my poor boy. You see how disturbed he's become. His father died in a tragic accident. To think someone convinced him otherwise. It's child abuse, plain and simple. I heard Uncle James, Evan insisted. He said the brake lines were worth it. He said, the child is confused. James himself stepped forward from the second SUV, grieving. He's misremembering conversations, mixing up dreams with reality. I am not. Evan's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down his face. I know what I heard. You killed him because he wouldn't let you control us. Maya suddenly pushed past Luke, moving to stand beside Evan. He's not confused, she said firmly. Evan's the smartest person I know. If he says he heard something, he heard it. And you are, Edward asked, his tone dismissive. Maya Harper. And you're a bully. Bullies always say people are lying when they tell the truth about them. Sarah Chen was practically vibrating with excitement. This was the kind of story that made careers. Mr. Marchand, would you be willing to go on record about your son's death? The police reports the investigation? Of course, Edward said smoothly. Everything was thoroughly investigated. It was a tragic accident, nothing more. The brake lines were corroded, a maintenance issue. Julian always was careless about such things. That's not true. Anna stepped forward, fury overcoming caution. Julian was meticulous about car maintenance. He had the Mercedes serviced 2 weeks before the accident. I have the receipts. Receipts that prove what? Patricia interjected. That he had it serviced. Not that someone didn't tamper with it afterward. You just admitted someone could have tampered with it, Luke pointed out. Patricia's face flushed. I admitted no such thing. I was speaking hypothetically. The interview was spiraling out of Edward's control, and he knew it. His mask was slipping, the real man showing through, cold, calculating, dangerous. Enough of this circus, he snapped. I have legal custody. Sheriff Morgan, do your duty. Dale had arrived during the confrontation, but he stood back, clearly reluctant. Mr. Marchand, given the allegations being made, I think we need to slow down and investigate properly. Investigate what? The fantasies of a disturbed woman and a manipulated child. Investigate these, Evan suddenly said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. Everything's on here. Emails from Uncle James about dealing with the problem. Financial records showing money transferred to an auto shop 2 days before Dad's accident. Recording from my tablet of grandfather threatening Mom last month. Edward went very still. You recorded me. Dad taught me to document everything. He said proof was the only protection against people like you. Edward lunged forward, trying to grab the flash drive, but Luke intercepted him, his construction worker's strength easily holding the older man back. That's assault, Luke said calmly. On camera. Sarah, you got that right. Every second, Sarah confirmed, her cameraman nodding. Edward straightened his suit, regaining composure with visible effort. That flash drive contains stolen corporate information. It's industrial espionage. It contains evidence of murder conspiracy, Anna said. And I'm giving it to the FBI, not you. The FBI? Edward laughed, but it sounded forced. You think they'll listen to you? I golf with the director. Maybe, Anna said, but you don't golf with every agent. You don't own every judge. And now that it's on camera, now that the media knows, you can't make it disappear. The standoff stretched taut. Then Edward's phone rang. He answered it, his face growing darker with each word he heard. What do you mean the story's already online? He snarled into the phone. Kill it. I don't care what it costs. Sarah Chen smiled. Live streaming, Mr. Marchand. Everything you've said and done here has been broadcasting for the last 10 minutes. 12,000 viewers and climbing. Edward's face went from red to purple to white. Luke could practically see him calculating, weighing options, looking for angles. This isn't over, he finally said, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won something, I'll bury you in legal fees. I'll destroy every business that employs you. I'll make sure your daughter never gets into a decent school. You've made an enemy you can't afford. Get off my property, Sep, Luke said simply. Now. James stepped forward. You're going to regret this, Harper. All of you will. We're not people you cross. Neither are we, Tom Richardson said, appearing with a group of townspeople. They'd been gathering during the confrontation, Luke realized. The mountain community closing ranks again. We're nobody special, old Pete Morrison added, but there's a lot of us nobodies, and we got long memories. Edward looked around at the cameras, the townspeople, his grandson standing firm beside the Harper girl. For the first time since he'd arrived, he looked genuinely uncertain. 3 days, he said finally. My offer stands for 3 more days. After that, Anna, you'll wish you'd taken it. They left in a spray of gravel and impotent fury. The moment they were gone, Anna collapsed, the strength that had carried her through the confrontation evaporating. Luke caught her, held her while she shook. You did it, he murmured. You stood up to him. We all did, she corrected, looking at Evan and Maya, who stood hand in hand looking far older than their years. Sarah Chen approached carefully. Mrs. Marchand, that flash drive, can I see what's on it? Anna looked at Luke, who nodded. They needed allies, and the media could be powerful ones. They spent the next hour going through the flash drive's contents on Anna's laptop. The evidence was damning, but not conclusive. Suggestive emails, suspicious financial transactions. Edwards recorded threats against Anna, enough to raise questions, but not enough to convict. It's a start, Sarah said. I'll need to verify what I can, but this is huge. The Marchands are pillars of society, if even half of this is true. It's all true, Evan said quietly. My dad knew they were dangerous. He was gathering evidence too. There's more hidden in our house in Vermont in his study. A safe behind the painting of the lighthouse. Anna's eyes widened. Julian never told me about a safe. He told me. Said if anything happened to him, I should tell someone we trusted about it. I trust Luke. The simple statement hit Luke like a physical blow. This brilliant, traumatized child trusted him. It was a responsibility he hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. Sarah left with promises to dig deeper to keep the story alive. The townspeople gradually dispersed, but not before organizing a more formal watch schedule. The mountain was mobilizing, protecting its own. That evening, as the sun painted the peaks gold and crimson, Luke found himself in the workshop with Evan finally working on that antique clock. The boy's small fingers were surprisingly deft handling the delicate gears with inherited expertise. My dad loved fixing things, Evan said softly. He said broken things had stories and fixing them was like giving them new chapters. Your dad sounds like he was a wise man. He was, but he was also sad a lot. The family, the money, it all weighed on him. He used to say he wished he could just disappear, be nobody, fix clocks and teach children and love my mom without all the rest. Maybe that's what you can do, Luke suggested. Be who your dad wanted to be. Evan considered this, carefully placing a gear. Maybe, but first we have to survive grandfather. We will, Luke said with more confidence than he felt. They worked in companionable silence until Maya burst in excitement, radiating from every pore. Mom's walking, she announced. Without the crutch, Anna's teaching her to paint. They followed her inside to find Anna and Maya at the kitchen table, watercolors spread between them. Anna was indeed standing, weight carefully distributed but crutch-free. Her painting showed the view from the cabin mountains in layers of blue and purple. Maya's was more abstract but full of joy-bright colors that seemed to dance. Look, Daddy, I'm an artist. You certainly are, baby girl. Luke met Anna's eyes over the children's heads. There was something there, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the way their broken pieces seemed to fit together. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch, despite the cold, wrapped in quilts and sharing hot chocolate spiked with whiskey from Luke's emergency stash. The story's everywhere, Anna said, checking her phone. 20 million views now. Edward must be apoplectic. Good. But he's also desperate now, and desperate people do dangerous things. I know. She was quiet for a moment. Luke, if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, promise me you'll keep Evan safe. You'll raise him like you're raising Maya, with love and kindness and respect for who he is, not what he could be worth. Luke set down his mug and turned to face her fully. Anna, listen to me. Nothing is going to happen to you, because I won't let it. We won't let it. This community, these people, we don't abandon each other. We stand and fight and protect what matters. What if we lose? Then we lose together, but we won't lose because we have something Edward doesn't understand. We have each other. Anna was crying now, silent tears that seemed to carry years of fear and grief. Luke pulled her against him, feeling how perfectly she fit in the circle of his arms. I haven't felt safe since Julian died, she whispered. Until now. Until you. You are safe, Luke murmured into her hair. Both of you. For as long as you need, for as long as you want, you're safe here. They stayed like that, holding each other while the mountains stood witness and the stars emerged one by one. Inside, their children slept peacefully, and below, Bobby Richardson kept watch in his truck. 2 more days, Luke thought. 2 more days of Edward's deadline. But something had shifted today. The battle lines were drawn, but they were not drawn where Edward expected. This wasn't about money or custody or legal documents anymore. This was about community versus corruption. Love versus greed. The power of ordinary people standing together against extraordinary wealth. A car engine echoed up from the valley, and they both tensed. But it was just someone passing through, heading higher into the mountains. The danger wasn't here yet, but it was coming. Tell me about the safe, Luke said. The one in Vermont. Anna pulled back to look at him. I don't even know where to start looking. Behind the lighthouse painting, Evan said, in Julian's study. Edward will have people watching the house. Maybe, but if there's evidence, real evidence that could prove murder, it's 500 miles away. We can't leave now, not with everything happening. Luke was quiet thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and called Tom Richardson. Tom, that cousin of yours, the one who drives trucks up to Boston. He running this week. 20 minutes later, they had a plan. Tom's cousin would drive to Vermont, break into the house if necessary, photograph everything in the safe. It was probably illegal, definitely dangerous, but it was their best shot at finding ammunition against Edward. Why? Anna asked after Luke hung up. Why are all these people helping us? Because that's what communities do. And because everyone here has been stepped on by rich people at some point. This is their chance to push back. The wind picked up, rattling the windows, and they went inside. Luke checked all the locks again, made sure the shotgun was loaded, then paused at the bottom of the stairs. Anna. She turned from where she'd been banking the fire. Stay tonight, he said softly. Not like that. Just stay. I'll sleep in the chair. I just need to know you're both close safe. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. They climbed the stairs together, checking on the children. Maya sprawled across her bed like a starfish. Evan curled tight, as if protecting himself even in sleep. In Luke's room, Anna took the bed while Luke settled into the old recliner Caroline used to read in. They didn't talk, but the silence was comfortable, full of understanding. Luke, Anna's voice in the darkness. Yeah. Thank you for everything, for being the kind of man who stops for boys in the road. Thank you, Luke replied, for reminding me that broken doesn't mean worthless. Sleep came slowly, but it came. And if their hands found each other across the space between bed and chair, fingers intertwining in the darkness, neither of them mentioned it. Outside, the mountains kept their ancient watch. 2 more days until Edward's deadline. 2 more days to find the evidence they needed to build their defenses to protect what had become precious. But tonight, in a cabin built by grief and rebuilt by hope, a new kind of family slept peacefully. Tomorrow would bring its battles. Tonight brought its own small victory, the victory of not being alone, of finding strength in unexpected places of love, growing in the spaces where fear used to live. The clock in the workshop, finally repaired, chimed midnight. A new day beginning. 1 day closer to Edward's deadline, but also 1 day stronger in their resolve. The storm was coming, but for the first time since Julian died, Anna believed they might actually weather it. And for the first time since Caroline died, Luke remembered what it felt like to have something worth fighting for. The second day of Edward's deadline arrived with unexpected news. Luke woke to his phone buzzing insistently at 5 in the morning. Tom Richardson's cousin had reached the Vermont house during the night. Luke, you need to see this. Tom's voice was tight with excitement. Jerry just sent the photos. There's enough here to bury them all. Luke carefully extracted his hand from Anna's. They'd fallen asleep that way. The small connection sustaining them through the night, and crept downstairs. His laptop took forever to boot up, or maybe it just seemed that way with his heart pounding. The images loaded slowly. Julian's safe had contained everything: correspondence between James and Patricia discussing the Julian problem. Bank records showing payments to an auto repair shop that had closed immediately after Julian's death, even a recording device with hours of family meetings where Edward discussed his plans for Evan's future, describing the boy as an asset to be properly managed. But the most damning piece was a handwritten note from Edward himself. The boy's potential is worth any sacrifice, even my son. Anna Thompson must never gain custody. Whatever measures necessary are approved. E.M. Luke's hand shook as he forwarded everything to Sarah Chen and 3 other journalists, then to an FBI contact. Mike, from the construction site, had provided his brother-in-law worked in the white-collar crime division and had been following the story online. Is it enough? Anna's voice from the doorway made him jump. She moved carefully, her injuries still limiting her mobility, but she was getting stronger every day. It's enough to start a real investigation. Whether it's enough to stop Edward today, Luke shrugged. We'll find out. Anna studied the images, her face paling as she read her father-in-law's casual dismissal of his own son's life. Julian suspected. He must have. That's why he gathered all this. He was protecting you and Evan the only way he knew how. But it wasn't enough. They killed him anyway. Luke stood and pulled her into his arms, feeling her tremble against him. But his evidence might save you now. Julian's still fighting for you through this. They were interrupted by feet thundering down the stairs. Maya appeared wild-haired and panicked. Evan's gone, she cried. His bed's empty and the windows open. The world tilted. Luke ran upstairs, Anna limping behind him despite the pain it must have caused. Maya's room was exactly as she'd said, Evan's sleeping bag empty, the window wide open, cold morning air streaming in. No, Anna breathed, clutching the doorframe. No, no, no. But then Luke saw a piece of paper tucked under the sleeping bag. Evan's precise handwriting filled the page. I'm sorry. I heard grandfather's men in the woods last night. They're planning something bad for today. I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me. I'm going to town to turn myself in to Sheriff Morgan. At least there will be witnesses. Please don't come after me. Take care of Mom. Tell her I love her. Evan. That brave, idiotic child, Luke muttered, already pulling on his boots. How long ago did he leave? Maya was checking the window. The dew on the roof is already disturbed and it's starting to dry. Maybe an hour. An hour head start on foot. Luke's mind raced. He'll stick to the road. He doesn't know the forest paths. I can catch him. I'm coming, Anna said. You can barely walk. I'm coming, she repeated, steel in her voice. That's my son out there. Luke saw there was no arguing. Maya, run to the Richardsons. Tell Tom what happened. Tell him to call everyone. I want to come too. I need you to be the messenger baby girl. You're the fastest runner on the mountain. People need to know what's happening. Maya nodded, understanding the importance of her mission. She was out the door in seconds, still in her pajamas, but not caring. Luke grabbed his keys and helped Anna to the truck. Every moment felt like an eternity. A 7-year-old boy alone on the mountain road with Edward's people, somewhere in the woods. The thought made his blood run cold. They drove slowly, scanning both sides of the road. The morning mist clung to the valleys, making it hard to see. Anna had her window down despite the cold, calling Evan's name. 2 miles down, they found his tracks leaving the road heading into the forest. He must have heard a car coming, Luke said. Tried to hide. They followed the tracks, Luke supporting Anna over the rough terrain. The trail led deeper into the woods toward the old mining area that had been abandoned for decades. Evan, Anna called, her voice breaking. Baby, please, it's safe. Come back. The forest swallowed her words. They pressed on the tracks, becoming harder to follow as the ground grew rockier. Then Luke heard a child crying, trying to muffle the sound. They found him huddled in the ruins of an old equipment shed, his feet bloody from running in shoes, not meant for the forest, his face streaked with tears and dirt. I'm sorry, he sobbed as Anna collapsed beside him, pulling him into her arms. I'm sorry, I just wanted everyone to be safe. You brave, foolish boy. Anna wept, holding him so tight Luke worried she might hurt him. Don't you ever do that again. Ever. But grandfather is never getting you, Luke said firmly. Not today, not ever. He helped them both up, Evan, limping from his injured feet, Anna limping from her still healing leg. They made a sorry procession back to the truck, but they were together. As they drove back toward the cabin, Luke's phone rang constantly. Tom reporting that the sheriff was looking for them. Sarah Chen saying the FBI wanted to talk to Anna immediately. Mike saying there were federal agents at the construction site asking about Luke, but it was the call from Linda that stopped his blood. "Luke, there's smoke coming from your cabin. The fire department's on the way," but he floored it, taking the turns at dangerous speeds. They crested the final hill to see flames licking from the workshop windows, smoke billowing into the morning sky. But the main cabin seemed untouched, and there was Maya safe with the Richardsons at the edge of the yard. Luke barely had the truck stopped before he was running to his daughter, scooping her up, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said. "I saw the men leaving when I got back from the Richardsons. They didn't see me. I hid in the old oak until they left." The fire department arrived quickly, containing the workshop fire, but the damage was done. All of Luke's tools, his projects, the antique clock he and Evan had just repaired, gone. This was arson, the fire chief told Dale Morgan, who'd arrived with lights and sirens. "Accelerant everywhere. Professional job." Dale looked grim. "Luke, I've got federal agents wanting to talk to all of you, and Edward Marchand just filed charges against you for kidnapping and custodial interference." "Of course he did," Luke said tiredly, "after he burned down my workshop. Can't prove that. His people have alibis. They were all at a prayer breakfast in town very publicly when this happened." Anna stepped forward, Evan's hand in hers. "We'll talk to the federal agents. We have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder." The rest of the morning became a blur of official vehicles and questions. FBI agents set up in Luke's living room, going through the evidence from Julian's safe, taking statements from everyone, including Maya, who solemnly told them about the mean grandfather who made everyone cry. Edward arrived at noon with a phalanx of lawyers demanding Evan be released to him immediately. But the lead FBI agent, a no-nonsense woman named Director Harrison, shut him down. "Mr. Marchand, you're currently under federal investigation for conspiracy murder for hire and witness intimidation. I'd suggest you stop talking before you incriminate yourself further." Edward's face went purple. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling the Attorney General." "You do that?" Director Harrison said calmly. "He's the one who authorized this investigation." The shock on Edward's face was almost worth everything they'd been through. Almost. "The boy is still my grandson. I have legal custody, which is being reviewed in light of new evidence," Judge Matthews said, arriving with more officials. Luke recognized him from town, one of the few judges who'd never been photographed at Edward's fundraisers. "An emergency hearing has been scheduled for tomorrow. Until then, Evan remains where he is." "This is a conspiracy," Patricia shrieked. "You're all in on it. Some hillbilly and a gold-digging whore turned my father against us." "Ma'am, I'd advise you to stop talking," Director Harrison interrupted. "You're also under investigation." James stepped forward, his facade finally cracking completely. "You can't prove anything. Those documents could be forged. The recordings could be faked." "Then you won't mind us examining your financial records?" Director Harrison asked. "Your phone records, your emails." The family lawyer whispered urgently in James's ear, and he fell silent. Edward stood there looking suddenly old and diminished. His empire was crumbling, his careful control shattered. He looked at Evan with something that might have been genuine longing. "I only wanted what was best for you," he told his grandson. "You're special. You could be anything, run everything. I wanted to give you the world." "I don't want the world," Evan said clearly. "I want my mom. I want to be normal. I want to build things and learn things and have friends. I want what Dad wanted, a life that means something more than money." "Your father was weak. My father was good," Evan interrupted. "And you killed him for it." The words hung in the air like an accusation before God himself. Edward's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Finally, his lawyers led him away, Patricia and James following all of them, looking like they'd aged a decade in an hour. The afternoon stretched on with more questions, more statements, more officials coming and going. But finally, as the sun began to sink toward the mountains, the last car pulled away, leaving them in blessed quiet. They stood in the yard, Luke, Anna, Evan, and Maya, looking at the blackened ruins of the workshop. Everything Luke had built, had saved, had inherited from his father reduced to ash and twisted metal. "I'm so sorry," Anna said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "This is my fault. Our fault. You've lost so much because of us." Luke turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "I've lost things. Just things. They can be replaced. But I've gained so much more." "How can you say that? Your workshop, your tools, are just objects. You and Evan are people. Family." He looked at both children, then back at Anna. "My family, if you'll have us." Anna's breath caught. "Luke, I know it's too soon. I know everything's crazy and uncertain, but almost losing Evan this morning made something very clear. I don't want you to leave when this is over, either of you." "We don't have anywhere to go anyway," Anna said with a watery laugh. "That's not why I want you to stay," Luke said firmly. "I want you to stay because Maya needs a mother who understands loss but still believes in beauty. Because Evan needs a father who values kindness over success. Because you need someone who sees you as Anna, not as Mrs. Marchand or Julian's widow or Evan's mother, just Anna." "And what do you need?" she asked softly. "I need to not be alone anymore. I need to build something new from all our broken pieces. I need—" He paused, then smiled. "I need you to teach me to paint. I need Evan to help me rebuild the workshop. I need Maya to remind me every day that love is worth the risk." Maya threw her arms around Anna's waist. "Say yes. Please say yes." Evan looked up at Luke with those two wise green eyes. "You'd really want us even after everything." Luke knelt down to Evan's level. "Especially after everything. You know why? Because you stood in that road ready to die for your mom. Because you ran away this morning trying to protect us. Because you're brave and brilliant, and you deserve a dad who's proud of you every single day." Evan's composure finally cracked completely. He threw himself at Luke, sobbing into his shoulder. Luke held him tight, feeling the boy's thin body shake with released emotion. "Yes," Anna whispered. "Yes to all of it." They stood there in the ruins of the workshop, holding each other as the sun painted the mountains gold. Tomorrow would bring the custody hearing, more investigations, probably more threats from Edward's lawyers. But right now, in this moment, they were together. Tom Richardson's truck pulled up, followed by others. The community had come again, but this time with lumber and tools. "Heard you need a new workshop," Tom said simply. "Figured we'd get started on it." "I can't pay," Luke started. "Nobody asked you to," Old Pete interrupted. "You stood up for what's right. We stand up for you. That's how it works." They worked until dark, clearing the debris, laying out plans for a new workshop. Anna and Maya made sandwiches and coffee, keeping everyone fed. Evan, despite his injured feet, insisted on helping, his quick mind already improving on Luke's original design. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, Luke and Anna sat on the porch. The smell of smoke still lingered, but underneath it was the scent of fresh lumber of new beginnings. "The hearing tomorrow," Anna said quietly. "What if Edward somehow wins?" "Then we run," Luke said simply. "All of us. Together. We get in the truck and we drive until we find somewhere he can't reach." "You'd give up everything. Your home, your job, your life here." "This isn't my life anymore. You are. The kids are. Home is wherever we're together." Anna leaned into him and he wrapped his arm around her. "Julian would have liked you," she said. "He would have been grateful that you're here for Evan. I hope I can be half the father to him that he deserved." "You already are. Did you see his face when you called him family? That's all he's wanted since Julian died, to belong somewhere, to be wanted for himself." "What about you?" Luke asked. "What do you want?" Anna was quiet for a long moment. "I want to wake up without fear. I want to watch our children grow up together. I want to paint mountains and teach kindergarten, and maybe someday not feel guilty for being happy again." "Julian wouldn't want you to feel guilty." "No," she agreed. "He'd want me to be happy. He'd want Evan safe and loved. He'd probably even approve of you, a man who values character over cash." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge one by one. The October night was cold, but neither wanted to go inside to break this moment of peace between crisis and whatever came next. "Luke," Anna said eventually, Yeah. Thank you for stopping that night. Thank you for not driving past. Thank you for standing in that road, for being worth stopping for. A sound from inside made them both turn. Evan was at the piano again playing something soft and sad and beautiful. Luke recognized it now, Chopin, a nocturne Caroline used to love. He plays when he can't sleep, Anna explained, when his mind won't stop spinning. Maya's the same with her books. Reads under the covers with a flashlight when worries keep her awake. They're quite a pair. They are, Luke agreed. Brother and sister already, I think. Family, Anna said, testing the word. We're really going to be a family. We already are. The rest is just paperwork. The piano music drifted out into the night, mixing with the sound of wind in the pines and the distant call of an owl. Luke thought about Julian gathering evidence to protect his family, even as danger closed in. About Caroline, who would have opened her arms to these refugees without hesitation. About the strange paths that led broken people to each other. I love you, he said suddenly, surprising himself with the words. I know it's too soon to say that. I know we're in the middle of chaos, but almost losing Evan today, seeing you stand up to Edward, watching you with Maya. I love you, Anna. She turned in his arms, her eyes bright with tears. I love you too. It terrifies me how much. I thought I'd never feel this again, never want to feel it again. But you make me brave enough to try. They kissed, then soft and careful, mindful of her still healing lips, but full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were crying and smiling in equal measure. Mom, Evan's voice from the doorway. Are you okay? I'm perfect, baby, Anna said. Come here. Evan came out, followed by Maya, who'd been awakened by the piano. They all squeezed onto the porch swing that Luke had built for Caroline, the four of them barely fitting but making it work. Are we going to be okay tomorrow? Evan asked. At the hearing? We're going to be together, Luke said. That makes us okay no matter what happens. I made something, Maya said suddenly, pulling a folded paper from her pajama pocket. For the judge. She unfolded it to reveal a drawing of 4 people standing in front of a cabin, mountains rising behind them. The proportions were off, and the faces were basically circles with features, but the love in it was unmistakable. She'd labeled each figure Daddy, Anna Mom, my brother Evan, and me. It's perfect, Anna said, hugging her. The judge will love it. I wrote something too, what? Evan said shyly. A letter about why I want to stay here. They didn't ask him to read it, respecting his privacy, but Luke felt proud that this boy who'd barely spoken when they first met now had words he wanted to share with the world. The night grew later, but none of them wanted to move to break the spell of this moment. They talked about rebuilding the workshop, about Evan's school possibilities, about Anna, maybe teaching at the local elementary. Normal future things, as if tomorrow's hearing was just a formality, as if Edward Marchand and his billions couldn't still destroy everything. Finally, when Maya started yawning and Evan's eyes were drooping, they went inside. The children insisted on all sleeping in the same room again, Maya and Evan talking quietly until their voices faded into sleep. Luke and Anna stood in the hallway between the children's room and Luke's bedroom, both reluctant to separate. Stay again tonight, Luke asked. I promised to keep to the chair. I'll stay, Anna interrupted. But not in the bed while you're in the chair. That's ridiculous. The bed's big enough for 2 people who keep to their own sides. So they lay down together, carefully apart, but aware of each other's every breath. In the darkness, their hands found each other across the space between them, fingers interlocking. Whatever happens tomorrow, Anna whispered, this has been worth it. Finding you, finding this place. Even if we lose, it's been worth it. We're not going to lose, Luke said with a conviction he pulled from somewhere deep. Edward might have money, but we have something more powerful. What's that? The truth. And each other. And a community that believes in justice over wealth. Anna squeezed his hand. I hope you're right. I am. Now sleep. Tomorrow we fight for our family. The word our hung in the air like a blessing. Their family. Born from tragedy but built on love stronger than blood or law or money. Outside the mountains stood eternal guard. The workshop ruins had been cleared, ready for rebuilding. The community slept, but ready to rise when needed. And in a cabin built by grief, but rebuilt by hope, a family that chose each other slept peacefully, gathering strength for the battle ahead. Tomorrow would bring judges and lawyers' threats and promises, the full weight of Edward Marchand's influence. But tonight brought its own power, the power of people who'd found home in each other, who'd discovered that sometimes the best families are the ones you build from the broken pieces of the ones you lost. The clock struck midnight. The third day had begun.